Rangers, though, last night in Europe, not a good look, not a good result. Hammered 5-1 by PSV Eindhoven, and that effectively ended any hopes of Champions League football for them this season. It's the Europa League for them. And afterwards, Michael Beale said, sorry, everyone.
I think over the two legs, the better team have gone through. It's clear that they're a very, very good team. I'm bitterly disappointed, can apologise to the fans for the scoreline this evening. I felt it was harsh in moments because I thought the players give everything they gave. And we get back to 2-1 and again we concede from a set play in a really crucial moment. There's things that we need to go back and work on. The first person that will look in the mirror is, of course, myself. I'm the person that leads the team. I think the objectives going into this first international break was obviously to go in the quarter-final of the Cup, which we are. It was to qualify for the Champions League. We've fallen short. And the third was to be top of the league going into the international break. That's got to be our focus now. There can't be any hangover. The time for me to pick the bones out of this and for everyone will be next week in the international break. The focus right now is to recover in time for the weekend. We need to respond. It's the best game to have, really. I think we played against an excellent team tonight, and clearly in one or two areas, certainly with the two forwards, Saibari and De Jong, they were just too strong for us to hold on to.
Okay, well, I mean, PSV, I would doubt, will go all that deep in this tournament. And Rangers have now dropped out, Simon. It's immensely disappointing for everybody attached to the football club. And it's immensely disappointing for Beale. And you can hear it in his voice. But I think quite simply, it's back to the drawing board, even this early. We're about to go into September, and Rangers are not good enough.
Well, that's about long, short and tall of it, isn't it? At this level, at the Champions League level, and we'll see how Celtic get on, because what they have at this moment in time is the rite of passage into the group stage as a result of winning the league. But let's be clear, I mean, Gianni Van Bronckhorst and his side last year performed poorly and ultimately cost his job in the Champions League. And he also performed poorly in some of the press conferences he did, where he seemed to wave the white flag in a certain mentality. But Celtic didn't put up any trees either in the Champions League. Celtic dined out on the performance against Real Madrid. The rest of the time, they didn't do very much in that Champions League either. And the tragedy is, as much as we may want this Scottish League to be competitive, and we may want this Scottish League to be what it was once before, producing these wonderful players that came through it, and one of them we'll hear from this morning, Graeme. But that time has changed. The economics of football have changed, and the Scottish leagues have been left behind. And surviving on broadcast deals of £30 million shared across 40 clubs is not going to enhance the opportunity for the Scottish clubs to get any better. I don't think they should not be able to produce young players, because ultimately academies are there and development opportunities are there, and Scottish people want to play football and young Scottish kids want to play.
Yeah.
But when you get to the competitive end of professional football and you're competing against the elite, whether Scots like it or not, they are a mile off. And you'll get these moments where the Battle of Britons will occur.
Yes.
And levels will be found because of the spirit of the game.
They can raise their game.
Because they can raise their game. But when it comes to this situation, tragically, the Rangers of the world are not amongst the discussion when it comes to competing in significant European football. Now, a couple of years ago, they did very well in the Europa League, so it tells you that they can compete. But when you step into the Champions League world, they're a mile off.
Yeah. Souness spoke to us earlier on. Later on this morning, you're going to hear from Graeme Souness on Liverpool, on the possibility, the prospect of Mo Salah leaving in this window. Could it happen? It might. But on Rangers and on Michael Beale, Souness opened up, especially off the back of that PSV result last night.
Well, I think he's been there before with Steven Gerrard, so he knows the pressures that come with being in the hot seat at Glasgow Rangers. Getting beat up in midweek ain't good for him. If they came unstuck on Sunday, that would put him under a hell of a lot of pressure. He's a new man. He's a relative newcomer to the hot seat. I've been there, Jim. I've managed big football clubs, and Rangers as big as any. The pressures that come with that job are enormous. And he's got to batten down the hatches and take it on the chin, and because we're getting a lot of criticism this morning, and just keep believing in what he's doing. Do I believe in him long term? I wouldn't be critical of him. I think it's a hard job. I know how difficult that job is. And we've got to give him time to get his team thinking the way he wants them to think and play the way he wants them to play. But it's not an easy job he's got.
Not an easy job he's got. Is it a club going forward under Michael Beale, though? That's a big question this morning, Simon. You know how big this football club is. Celtic and Rangers are giants. They really are giants. Is it going forward? Is the club going forward under BeIN?
I don't think it's just about BeIN, though, is it? I think it's about Rangers as a football club, full stop. BeIN is a component part of it. And the argument will be how much enhancement has he brought to the Gianni Van Bronckhorst project, and what did Gerrard do when he caught Celtic in a moment when they might have been asleep at the wheel? They regained their poise, and all of a sudden Celtic have got the momentum. I don't think they're going forward. I'm not entirely sure they're going backwards. But I guess if you stand still, eventually you go backwards. And they've got themselves into a Champions League qualification position. They had their heads handed to them. And they'll go into the Europa League. The question will be asked, how do they compete in the Europa League? Because obviously they've been in the Europa League before. They've been very significant in the Europa League in the last time they were there. So there's no real reason why they shouldn't be again taking that opportunity. And we'll ask the question then, if they fall out very early in the Europa League, what does that mean to them then? But there's nothing about Rangers right now. I'm not an admirer of this fella, and you know I'm not, because I think he runs with the hare and hunts with the hounds. But that could be laid at the door of many football managers. And one moment he was staying with QPR when they gave him an opportunity. The next moment he was out the door to what he considered to be a bigger, better deal. So he needs to he knows what the task is. His task is to make Rangers better than Celtic. That's his predominant task. European football is a cherry on a cake that gives you more revenue, but the reality of it is that most Scottish fans have a tacit acceptance. It's a challenge getting the Champions League, but the big battle in terms of Rangers and Celtic fans, the big battle is if you can you come out on top against Celtic?
Yeah, but Simon, Rangers and Celtic used to excel in Europe, had enormous European nights, were wonderful. Celtic, the first British team to win the European Cup in '67. I mean, come on.
But
there's history, there's a connection with Europe.
The financial landscape has changed. And it's even changed in the last 15, 16 years, because it was 20 years ago, I think, that Martin O'Neill took them to a Europa final. They've been to a Europa final, so they're capable of getting there. They're not capable of dining at the top table.
Yeah.
The top table is the Champions League. And tragically, I don't take any pride or any delight in saying this, that they aren't going to be competitive in the Champions League. They simply don't have the resources. Now, there is an argument to say, well, why don't they have the resources? Because the comparative turnover of Rangers and Celtic could meet some of the sides, which is the argument I made last year about Shakhtar Donetsk. Because Shakhtar Donetsk's turnover isn't particularly bigger than Celtic's, but the competitivity of the league that they play in is probably greater than the Scottish League, because the Scottish League, I'm sorry, isn't a great standard.
I thought you said the Sausage League.
The Scottish League.
All right.
The Scottish League isn't a great standard.
Yeah.
So if you're not playing highly competitive football week in and week out, and I know that the people, every time Celtic and Rangers take the field, the opposition in the rest of the league will raise their game.
Yeah.
But the quality is not there.
Well, it wasn't there last night, that is for sure. Rangers hammered 5-1 by PSV and went out 7-3 on aggregate to PSV Eindhoven. Do Rangers fans listening this morning just accept, quite honestly accept, Champions League, it's too far a step for us at this precise moment. It was just too much to go to Eindhoven and expect to get a result there. Or was it? And if it was, why on earth is that the case?
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.